I'm just going to come out and say it. The Bible is scandalous. It does not go with our modern world. It is absolutely antithetical to the values that most people live by. And we hear this from people outside the world criticizing our book, criticizing faith, saying that there's no place for it in modern society. And frankly, I agree. Probably not for the reasons that they think. People criticize the Bible for sexual immorality or violence or science or culture, and we can have a conversation about that, but that's not even the half of it. The most scandalous thing about our Bible, the most scandalous thing about faith, the thing most antithetical to living in our world today is God's mercy. God's mercy is something that people do not understand, myself included. And this is on perfect display in our reading last weekend from the Gospel, from Luke, the prodigal son, the story of the two sons. Here we have a boy, a son who goes to his father and says, "Give me what is due to me. I'm not going to wait for you to be dead because you're basically dead to me already. I want my inheritance." Pretty disrespectful, to say the least. Beyond that, he goes to a foreign nation, something scandalous not only to his father, but to his nation, going to the others. As a Jew going to a Gentile nation, this is scandalous. But even more than that, he wastes his money on dissipation, lying with prostitutes, doing all the things he knows he's not supposed to do. He squanders his wealth until he finds himself herding the swine, being with the most disgusting of animals for Jews. And so he's not only disgraced his father, disgraced his nation, but now his God. He has broken the law and he's left himself unclean. And we would expect, if we were in this time, to hear this story from Jesus and to think that the end of the story is something like, "And if you follow that path, you end up dead in a ditch. Don't do that." It's a cautionary tale. That's what we'd expect in our culture today. But that's not what we get. The real scandal of the story is not what the son does. It's what the father does. After he's done these absolutely abhorrent things, the son returns to the father and the father hugs him. He kisses him. He gives him even more wealth, puts robe on him, puts a ring on him, gives him a fattened calf for a big celebration. Even before he's able to apologize, this has nothing to do with his contrition and everything to do with the father. Even before that happens, the father gives him even more. And if you're like me, you're sitting here like that older son saying, "What the heck is this? This is an injustice. This is a scandal. Here I am following all the rules. Here I am causing no scandal for the family, and yet I've got nothing. And you give him everything." Yes, I identify with that older son, and I think I always have. When I was a kid, I was a good kid. I followed the rules. I respected my parents for the most part. Can't say the same thing for my classmates, for my sisters who got caught, got grounded. How terrible. And yet, we got the same things. I followed the rules, they didn't. This is a scandal. I think when I went to college and tried my best to live a life of faith, follow the rules, do everything I could, and yet my classmates gave in to debauchery, broke every commandment in the book. How is this fair? Why didn't God send a lightning bolt down to hit them? I think even now as a priest, here I am, trying to live my best, give everything I can to the people I serve. And yet what do I see? Scandals in the newspaper. Headlines of priests doing terrible things. What is God doing about this? Why isn't he taking care of this? Yes, I find myself like the older son, and I imagine many of you do as well. Here you are watching a religious video, which means you probably have something good inside you, some interest in God, and you probably look at our culture and say, "Those people. Oh, the sinners, the evil people. Why won't God do something about this? Why do bad things happen to me and they continue to do bad things?" Yes. If you can identify with that, if there's even a little bit inside of you that has a little resentment for those who do evil, let me tell you something. This gospel is for you. It's not for the sinners. It's not for the tax collectors. As much as we think it's about God going to those and bringing them back, it's actually about us, the resentful, the older children. Notice how this gospel begins. It says that the tax collectors and sinners were sitting with Jesus and eating with them, but then the Pharisees and scribes began to complain. They grumbled about him that he eats with sinners. And so Jesus addressed this parable to them, not to the sinners, but to the Pharisees, to the older children among us, to people like me who don't understand mercy. Because you see, it's very easy to identify with this older son as if he's the good character, but he's not. And we see this quite clearly in the fact that he has the same problem as the younger son, albeit he lives in a different way. For what does he do? He focuses more on his rights than on his relationships. He is more concerned with what he is due than with the life of his brother. Now his brother cuts himself off from the father, but the son does the same thing, the older son. You notice how he uses the language. He doesn't say, my brother did this. He says, your son. He can't even bear to call him a brother. He is so resentful for him, so angry towards him, that he's cut himself out of his life. This is a sin. It's a grave sin. And I think it's a reminder to us, as I gave that long litany of things that I'm resentful of others, reminder of us that we ain't perfect either. How sad it is to think that I could go through my life looking down at people when in fact I was always in the position of the younger son. Sure, I may not have done some bad things that my sisters did, but I definitely did some bad things too. And if I look at the older son, I can definitely see that I treated them pretty terribly, that I was horrible to them, even if I was good to my parents. I can think in college, sure, I didn't break those commandments, but I did break some. I didn't exactly live a virtuous life in every moment of the day. I think even now as a priest, I did not stop sinning the moment the bishop touched me on my head and anointed me. No, the oil went on my hands, but I continued to be a sinner. I continued to have resentment, dividing the human family. And so just like that older son, I must remember that I am not perfect, that you are not perfect. And as much as we'd like to put ourselves above others, the fact of the matter is we are all the younger son. We might have a scale, they've done this much, we've done this much, but the fact of the matter is we can't take any sin away, so even one leaves us in peril. And so we must have a forgiveness from our Father. We must ask for mercy. We must realize that there is absolutely nothing we can do on our own. And this gives us humility, hopefully. Hopefully it does. But I think there's still a sense that we say, well, we're still better. We still don't need as much, that it's because of our merit that we live, and so we should be given each what we deserve. Give us some punishment, but not as much as the others. And this is, I think, the crux of the issue. The real thing that the Pharisees and the older son, that I often do not understand. And that is this. If you live your life based on merit, you will never understand the joy of grace. If you live your life determining everything that you deserve and demanding that, saying that I did this, therefore that, you will never understand what God really wants to give us. Because really, God gives us way more than we deserve. The grace that comes to us is a blessing beyond our comprehension, and the younger son gets this, but the older does not. He puts a limit on God. This is what I deserve, and I don't want anything more, anything less. How sad this is. And until I think we can understand that grace, we will never live it. Until we've had an experience of getting something we don't deserve, we will always put ourselves above others and push people down. I remember when I was in high school having an experience of this. I was, like many high schoolers, wanting independence, and I wanted a car, but I didn't have a lot of money. My parents didn't have a lot of money, so I got a job. And I worked hard and saved up a lot of money until I was able to make a down payment. My parents helped me a little bit, but basically I had to pay all the payments. I had to make sure that I was on time. They put up the money up front, but it was up to me to pay it back. And it was going to work. I had a great pay scale, and I was going to earn it, and all my work was going to come back to me. Until the electrical system went in the car. There's $600 more. And then the tires went, and there's a couple $100 more. And then all of a sudden I'm looking at this sheet thinking, I'm never going to pay this off. The interest is rising and I just don't have enough to do it. I'm taking extra shifts and I'm never going to get out from drowning. The water is just rising and rising, and you start to feel this debt weighing on you. You start to feel this guilt. There's nothing I can do, this helplessness. And I began to really stress for a couple months, to really feel like I was stuck and alone. Until Christmas morning that year, I open up all the presents, it's nice, and parents are very giving, and I pull out of my stocking a piece of paper. I was very confused at first because it was the things I owed my parents, all the payments and all interest, and there it was. with a big X over it and a 0 at the bottom. My parents, really unable to take on this payment themselves, took on the debt for me. They gave it away. They were able to lift that incredible burden that I couldn't lift myself, taking it on for them. I don't know how else to describe it, but it was just the most amazing experience of grace. Very much what that younger son felt, of feeling absolutely stuck, feeling like there is absolutely nothing you can do, that you are hopeless, to have someone reach down a hand to lift you up, to know that there's no way you could ever pay back this debt, no way that you could ever earn what you've been given. That is what the younger son understands and what the older son will never understand. If we live by a life of merit, of this is what I deserve, we will never, ever understand the joy of grace. And I tell you, this is a scandal. It is an absolute scandal that our God gives without asking anything in return, that he loves without expecting anything in return, because there is no way we could pay for it all. And if you ask me, this is what the world doesn't understand. This is what is most scandalous about our culture, about our values, and what faith does not get about our world, is because we give without expecting anything in return, because we have been given. My brothers and sisters, accept this as a scandal. Accept it as something that does not make sense, and live your entire lives filled with that grace. Filled knowing that there is nothing you could ever do, and yet God gives it to you anyway. May God give you his peace.